Now, if there's ever been anything more convoluted and complicated to follow, here we go. We had action taken by the counties and moved to modified phase 1. Good morning, this is Lance Kenmore with the Kenmore Team, and I'd like to welcome you to this week's edition of the Tri-Cities Real Estate Update. As always, you can contact me, Lance Kenmore, anytime direct on my cell phone at 727-8977, or visit us on the web at kenmoreteam.com. Once again, I always like to thank John McKay for hosting and everybody here at the station for working to make this happen. Mr. John McKay, happy 4th of July.
Yes, absolutely.
Happy birthday, America.
Yes.
How are you doing over there?
Doing well. Didn't get a lot of sleep because my neighbor's in Kennewick. I try to be a law-abiding citizen and not go boom, boom. But I think some of our neighbors went to Burbank and they got a whole bunch of artillery.
Well,
we had one fly about 10 feet over the roof of our house.
Yeah, I think same thing.
Like, you guys don't know how to shoot off. Move over, Junior.
Same thing in our neighborhood. About two or three nights ago, I think things really started to kind of heat up a little bit out there. And
yeah, our dogs don't like it, so the next time they go out in the cul-de-sac, we're gonna turn the dogs on them.
They were doing some early celebration.
Mm-hmm.
Well, totally looking forward to this evening. However, I think it will be a little bit different than most normal years with fireworks and
as far as I know, I believe, and I can't confirm this, but I heard the only area that's going to try to do, I heard Moses Lake, something about a big show up there in Grant County.
Gotcha.
But everything else is going to be everyone else's backyard boom, boom.
Yeah, and I mean, here in the Tri-Cities, I think West Richland has the corner on the market there.
Yeah, so that's going to be like New York Harbor.
Yes, and speaking of that, McKay, I did a little bit of research in honor of our 4th of July today to see if you know what you think has been or generally is the largest fireworks display. First, we'll start in the world.
I'm going to go out on a limb and say Sydney, Australia.
That's a good one, but Dubai takes the title. Yeah, New Year's in Dubai takes the title. And I'm gonna quiz you a little bit today too. I brought you a little quiz.
Okay.
So for the 4th of July, in honor of that falling on a Saturday for our radio show, give me 3 of the top U.S. cities for fireworks shows.
I'm gonna go with Dallas, Texas.
Dang, you nailed. There was controversy that might have been potentially number 1. Yeah, there's a suburb in Dallas called Addison. How did you know that?
I'm just guessing. I'm going off general political perceptions in America.
Okay, yeah, you hit it. Dallas is right there.
And I'm going to say New York Harbor.
Yes, that's there also.
And this one's just absurd. Sturgis, South Dakota.
Well,
because of all the bikers.
You almost had it, but actually DC still brings it in the top 5.
Wow.
Sturgis did not make the top 5, but I'm still blown away by your Dallas comment. I literally that would not have been on my list. I would have had DC in there. Boston puts on a good show, but yeah, suburb city called Addison in Dallas, Texas. Yeah, apparently just throws an absolute banger for the 4th of July.
Okay, bucket list.
So now rumors out there that DC is still holding a big shebang tonight. So one of the few, when I was doing the research for the radio show and going over that, They say 80% of the fireworks celebrations have been canceled across the U.S. this year.
Yes.
So really kind of a little bit different, but we are looking forward to our local residents. I know that West Richland will not disappoint, so we are planning on taking a hike up a local hill and watching some of the fun.
Oh, yes.
So that'll be a good time.
Whatever we don't get at the stadium and on the river will be more than made up by our friends and neighbors.
Absolutely. Well, turning our business to more real estate specific topics, we always like to start off with our crazy celebrity real estate story. And this week we have the Under Armour founder, Kevin Plank, had purchased a house 3 years ago in Washington, D.C., speaking of D.C. and their celebration, put it on the market, did a huge remodel, found out that he wasn't using it, put it on the market for $29.5 million in the end of 18. And then recently sold it, but listen to this haircut he took on this. Sold for $17 million.
Wow.
So reduced the price almost $12 million is just absolutely incredible.
Well, I will say some of the money he got comes from my kids, because my kids, Harley and Dylan, for all their sports, softball, football, they all do Under Armour.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. Now, interesting to note that one of the things is he resigned as the actual CEO last year. I believe it was last year, and then but he's still active on the board and is the creative director. But I didn't know this till I saw the article. Is he is doing a huge development, a huge development that is actually a multi-billion-dollar development that he is heading up. And so interesting to see him parlay into real estate. Now, mind you, that didn't come without some controversy. So he's doing that on Baltimore's waterfront. And it said that the project controversially qualified for the federal government's Opportunity Zone program, which controls the amount of taxes paid for investors putting money in certain areas. And the Maryland governor declared it an opportunity zone when staffers had indicated that it did not qualify.
Well, it's probably the region of the zone that it's in, because Baltimore, honestly, they've had some tough times here
So
and there.
it sounds like there might have been a little undue influence there in that, or just influence, we shall say. But maybe spending more time on the Baltimore project, and so that's a reason why we see a lot of people buy and sell, is work requirements change, positions change, and people need to move quickly. And Tri-Cities is no different in that aspect. A couple of the national statistics that I wanted to get out there before we delve into our local stuff that are really important. One of the things we talked about is why our market has stayed so strong during what's been happening during the pandemic. So really interesting. I pulled up some numbers on city growth versus suburban growth. I mean, I generally would consider us in the suburban category here in Tri-Cities. So if we go back to 2010, cities were growing by 1% and suburbs were growing by 0.9. So less of a very small difference. But by 2012, cities were growing 1.17% and suburbs still only by the 0.91. Now, that gap persisted until 2015, but 2015, we start to see the trend reverse. Cities grew by only 1.03% and suburbs had expanded by 0.95. So that gap was being reduced. Now, what we look at what's happened in the last 4 years, the last data in 2018 and 19, city growth was only 0.31%, had dropped like 70%. and suburbs grew by 0.65, so outpacing city growth by 2-1.
Is that anything to do with running out of land in the city limits?
Well, a lot of it can be, as there's not as much area that they can actually grow to. And then another thing too that ends up affecting that type of data is transportation, as they start to change how they're busing people to work or then busing people back. So transportation systems come into play on that. And then you nailed it, McKay. Available land also becomes an issue there. So it'll be really, really interesting, because we've predicted through the pandemic and what's been going on even further. I think we'll see that gap widen even further as more people look to be in a rural suburban type area versus city centers. And so it's going to be a real interesting economic situation to monitor. So paying close attention to that was a big one. The other one that was really interesting that we've started to see happen is the banks continuing to tighten up their standards for lending. And so here we are at a time when people are like, gosh, I want to buy a house, or I'm trying to buy a house, or I'm looking for affordable housing. Well, now what's happening is the lending requirements are actually tightening up. Why is that happening? Well, a prime example of that is the part of the CARES Act that came out is it allowed borrowers to defer debt payments and prevented lenders from reporting that to credit reporting agencies. Ooh. So now what ends up happening is the credit score, just the FICO score, becomes less of a good indicator of the strength of the borrower.
Because the information's not being updated.
The information's not being updated, and it might not be accurate. So you might have a borrower, if the lender has looser guidelines, meaning they're not going to require you to collect as much information, and they just are going off, say, a credit score. Well, now they can't give as much credence and weight to that credit score. The way around it, add more guidelines. You have to produce bank statements. You have to produce additional documentation. You have to, sign a declaration that nothing has changed in those levels. So really, really kind of a interesting effect of that now borrowers who were, say, maybe on the borderline of being able to get a house, something that was designed to help a large portion of the population, now is hindering the ability and the access to credit in certain situations. So cause and effect, we're always just kind of monitoring that cause and effect and what's happening as we go through this pandemic and how things change. Area change, just in the last 2 days, big time changes in our area here. Yep. And as we had the governor come and visit, then we had action taken by the counties and moved to modified phase 1.
Yes.
Now, if there's ever been anything more convoluted and complicated to follow, here we go down that trail. So just a couple things to point out and talk about. So especially with the way real estate guidelines are put out and mandates are put out. So you could read 5 different articles in the last 2 days, and some would say that we're in modified phase 1, and some would say that is phase 1.5. So which article do you believe? Which news story do you listen to? Are we in 1.5 or are we modified phase 1?
I'm going to go 0.5 because they changed things and it sounds better.
It sounds better. Okay, so here's what gets really interesting about that in the real estate world. Just so you know, McKay, there is also a King County phase 1.5. That is different, has different guidelines than phase 1.5. This is not a joke.
Wow.
So when you look at what Washington Association of Realtors puts out, we literally have a sheet of our guidelines to follow with our real estate activities. And on this sheet, McKay, there are different columns. And there's a column for phase 1 and phase 1.5. Pretty simple, right? But then there's a column for King phase 1.5. Because King County phase 1.5, different set of rules. If you're following the real estate rules for King County phase 1.5, you can have 3 people in the house at once.
Wow.
If you're just phase 1.5, which you and I are arguing about, that's what we're in, versus modified phase 1, then we are back to only having 2 people in the house at a time. So, we're constantly monitoring this, going over that, looking at what it is. And then I ran across 2 articles that called it King County phase 1.4. And I'm trying to determine if that's a typo. And so prepping for the radio show, I don't know if I left more confused to give the listeners good information or less confused. At the end of the day, we're following the guidelines of phase 1.5 in the real estate world and for local Tri-Cities. That maintains us at the same level that we've been operating over the course of the last month and a half.
Yeah.
And that is 2 people in a house at a time, wearing your masks, wearing your face coverings, following that. So
yes,
for us on the real estate side, other than expanding a little bit of our office operations, the definition of our minimum office operations, most of our folks have been working remotely anyway, so not a huge change for us.
Same here.
But that's exactly
our
right.
Sales associates.
I mean, parking lots are a ghost town, that type of stuff. So that's where we're at as far as for us in the real estate world. It wasn't a huge change because we've been operating that way. Those protocols are not changing for us. We're maintaining those safety protocols. We're following that. And the market is staying very, very hot. When we come back from the break, what I want to talk about after the break is some of the lessons learned during the last 16 weeks of what we've been in. I went back, looked at some of the old shows that we did, and pulled out what has changed in the real estate world. What are the lessons we learned while being stuck in phase 1? And what does that mean for real estate moving forward in our next phases?
Right here on News Talk 870.
Welcome back to the Tri-Cities Real Estate Update. Today we've been talking about some of the national issues going on in real estate, how that affects our local markets, some changes to credit, some continual tightening of credit restrictions as we see deferments and those types of things play out in the market. Before we jump into the second half of our topic, I always like to get a pick 3 out because we put on some amazing new inventory. And another national story I didn't even get to in the first half, but with inventory nationally being down around 20% because of the pandemic, it's one of the things that has really kept prices up and created a little bit of a shortage in the housing market. Every time we put new inventory on, it's really, really important.
It goes.
We're still seeing a lot of multiple offers out there with it going. But brand new inventory to the market. Pick number 1 this week. This is a really fun one. It could be classified either way as an amazing house or a business opportunity. 46601 Gap Road out in Prosser. And we have listed the Beryl Springs Vineyard and Winery. And so what this comes with is a 3,100 square foot Rambler house. It's a 4-bedroom, 3-bath. And it has a private basement entrance around the back. So you kind of get that main level living, but then you have the basement type setup. This is on 5 acres. Absolutely beautiful operating vineyard. And then they've got a tasting room that's part of the package that comes with this. And Seattle Wine Awards has recognized Barrel Springs. They've had 17 gold and silver awards since 2011.
Wow.
So if you've thought about wanting to have, say, an event center or a wedding center, or operate an amazing winery, this is priced at $875,000. So you're getting the house, you're getting the space there, you're getting the event center, you're getting the grapes, and that's coming in at $875,000. That's going to be a fun one. That's going to be a lot of fun. Pick number 2, back here in Richland, 1725 Sequoia. This is in South Richland, Sequoia Springs. It's a 2,451 square foot, 2-story. And that is just in an absolute killer South Richland location. Now, maybe because I can walk to Dutch Brothers from this house pretty easy, but just right around the corner from Orchard Elementary, you've got Yolks over there, you've got the Dutch Brothers over there. Very, very well kept house. I mean, the pictures of this are gorgeous. You've got beautiful laminate wood floors in the dining room and living room areas. You've got a stone surround gas fireplace. I mean, the list just goes on and on, but 4-bedroom, 3-bath with a den in that neighborhood, and that's coming in at $385,000.
Wow.
That one's gonna go quick. There's people out there looking for that. And then pick number 3, another fantastic new addition to our inventory, 4606 Tamworth over in Pasco. Now, this is a 3-bed, 2-bath Rambler, 1,726 square feet, new laminate wood flooring throughout, kind of that gorgeous gray tones color, looks absolutely fantastic. In the kitchen, you've got solid surface counters, a breakfast bar, new appliances, fully fenced backyard, and just a really well-kept, fully fenced backyard. Nice home, and that's coming in at $310,000.
And I'm thinking with a fenced backyard, there's probably already some nice landscaping.
Absolutely. I mean, this place just looks ready for today's a great day if you like your 4th of July barbecue type situation.
But no more than 5 people.
No more than 5 for sure. So there is still some fantastic inventory coming on board. Now it's moving very, very quickly.
Yes.
In fact, I had some of our local data that I ran before the show just to double check, and kind of looking at our numbers in June versus the previous month. So June versus May, average days on the market, and this was a big change to move in 1 month. In June, we went to 29 days on the market from the average. Previous month was 36.
Ooh.
Statistically, that's a big move in a short period of time. Part of that was our listings sold increased. It was 307 the month before, a little bit slower, 408 last month from some data that I was just playing around with the numbers. So we saw a big increase in what was going on in June. Obviously, you can look outside and drive around. You can see the activity. That type of activity spurred on sales as people got out there and made offers. Before the break, I said I was going to talk a little bit about lessons learned during phase 1.
Yes.
I thought that was important for real estate to say, hey, what are some of the big takeaways that we had in real estate out of phase 1? The first thing that I wrote down is more than ever, and this might be more specific to our business or business in general, but also the real estate market, is it was readily apparent quickly that we have to be more agile and ready for change. As a company, as a business, as an industry, we have to be more flexible. And I got to tell you, our team jumped in and really adopted this. I don't know if you've seen on TV at all, if you've seen the Microsoft Teams commercial, and they show like the doctors or the police districts saying how they're able to continue business through Microsoft Teams. Mm-hmm. I feel kind of slighted that we weren't on one of those freaking commercials because that is 100%. I think it just resonates with me because that's what we had to do. So we moved our entire team quickly to that ecosystem. Mm-hmm. It increased our communication. It increased our chat ability. It increased the ability to see each other face to face when we weren't there. We totally dumped all of our desktop machines and went right to the Microsoft ecosystem with Surfaces. So the mobility factor that we have now, I would say, is 10 times better than it was prior to phase one. I looked back at some of my notes in one of the radio shows. I said I had put some notes down in one of my previous outlines for the radio show that we had allowed some people to move their desktop machines and their monitors and stuff home as right when the pandemic hit. It was almost laughable at this point for me to read those notes, which was really just 16 weeks ago, because now we have the ability to shut the office, clear out, do a COVID cleaning if necessary. Mm-hmm. We have the ability to do that now within, I would say, an hour or less.
Wow.
And have almost no disruption to our workflow.
Wow.
And I think our industry needed that. I feel like we've always been a progressive company, but sometimes if someone really kicks you in the hind end, it pushes you to another level. And there's just no comparison at where we're at today as far as how agile we are and how quickly we are to respond. Mm-hmm. So that was one of my big lessons from the last 16 weeks of phase one. Second lesson that I wrote down that it's really important for the real estate market is that the housing market is healthier than people expected. Yes. I would say pre-phase one, pre-COVID, there was a lot of talk kind of starting to bubble up about when that bubble was going to burst, that our market was overpriced, that there was, and there was just constantly this underlayment of what's going to happen. And they were predicting that a big event would happen to burst that bubble. Well, last time I checked, we had a big event. And it's called a pandemic, and and the housing market has weathered that storm here just like amazingly. And so I think that was a big lesson to look at and to pay attention to the fundamentals. That was the other thing, is those fundamental numbers. What are days on the market doing? What are average price points doing? What are the different segments of the market doing? And so those indicators will continue to be very, very important in the analysis we do to help sellers get the most amount of money for their homes and to also help buyers get into homes. And that is, that was just a huge takeaway that was generally, I think most would have said, unexpected.
Well, they should have used your team, because you could have done a commercial to replace that British Metropolitan Police guy. Oh my. Do you remember that one? Yeah. We're running our COVID. I'm like, okay, I get it.
Yes, I know which one you're talking about. So those were the big takeaways for the real estate market. Moving forward, we're able to still, I put it this way, I said somebody the other day, if you would have sat me down at the middle of February and said, hey, Lance, I've got a little test for you guys. I want you to go into second quarter and I want you to double the amount of work it takes to do your showings. I want you to close your office. And I want you to stop face-to-face communication with your team and sell the same amount of houses. Go.
Yeah.
And I would have been like, dude, you are crazy. Like, this is, first of all, that doesn't sound like any fun. And second of all, how are we going to do that? Well, looking back, that's exactly what we did. And so now I am just like super pumped that we're in a different phase. And I'm thinking to myself now, at the way we're at, bring on phase 3 and I can double my production.
There you go.
so let's be part of this recovery. And so it was a lot of fun to go back and do this review. I'm excited for Tri-Cities for us to get to the next phase. I'm excited for some of those businesses that have been really, really hurting to get a little bit of relief now.
My daughter's softball team being able to legally practice.
Yes, absolutely. So we're looking forward to that. As today is America's birthday, 244 years by my math.
Yes, I'll trust your math.
Easy math for a guy that was born in 76.
There you go.
So there we go. Everybody enjoy the 4th of July. Enjoy your family and those that you are with. And we will be right back here next week.
Right here on News Talk 870.